This scholar is Alexander Abian, a well-respected mathematician who did significant work on the field of set theory and mathematics. After immigrating from Iran, he became a professor at numerous prestigious universities. And here he is in the 90s being interviewed on a local Iowa TV station, not for his contributions to the world of mathematics or for his life story of immigrating to the US. No, instead, Abian is being interviewed because in 1991, he wrote a column for a college newspaper that advocated for, blowing up the moon. Yep. Alexander claimed that blasting the moon would remove the Earth from its gravitational pull, thus stabilizing the climate. He alleged that this change would eliminate seasons, heat waves, snowstorms, and hurricanes. He also allegedly said that this panacea would solve cancer, AIDS, overpopulation, and famine. And as you can imagine, this was received with a little bit more attention than the usual op-ed in the college newspaper. This received international coverage. Because once again, this is supposed to be a very well-respected mathematician, and here he is literally talking about blowing up the moon. My man is literally a Riverdale villain. And when you see the contemporary reporting on the subject, you can see that his co-workers are very uncomfortable with the new attention that the university is getting.
Well, certainly around the department, people are well aware of his extracurricular theories.
In no small part due to the fact that Alexander was legitimately a good mathematician. He had done great work in set theory, but he's not being interviewed about that. No, instead he's talking to People magazine about blowing up the moon. And once he got started, he was very devoted to this cause of lunar destruction. He would do an interview with anybody. You want to just come into my house, poke around? Come on in.
I see you have a lovely assortment of plastic utensils.
This particular interview from the show Ordinary Iowa is one of the strangest things I have ever seen.
And to blow up the moon, blow it up.
Blow it up,
Yes.
totally.
Yeah, totally, completely.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen. That's
Blow it
beautiful.
up, yes.
I'm all for it.
Yes.
I'm all for it.
Like, this is literally Eric Andre levels of surreal.
Now you realize those are some pretty strong statements.
Very strong, and I
Those are
want to
some
be
strong
stronger
statements.
even.
But
yes.
you know what? I totally agree, and I'd like to get a harumph from the audience, because that is. Let's have a harumph from the audience. Harumph for that stuff. I think that's great. That's good.
So all this brings up the question of what would actually happen if we did blow up the moon? Well, if you're an Abianite, this would obviously just lead to a Garden of Eden type situation and usher in world peace. However, if you're one of those pesky, brainwashed physicists, it may be a little bit more complicated. So to actually blow up the moon, it would take more than the entire nuclear stockpile of the world, because the gravitational binding energy of the moon is 120 million trillion gigajoules. This means that unless if you're able to deliver that much energy in one go, the moon would just break apart and then reform itself back into a sphere. To properly blow it up, you would have to drill shafts hundreds of kilometers deep into the surface of the moon and then drop 600 billion of the most powerful atomic weapons ever made. But let's just say, for argument's sake, that all peoples of the earth set aside their differences and band together to blow up the moon. Well, what would it look like? Well, first off, you would have to deal with the tons of moon debris that would be falling towards the surface of the earth. And some scientists have calculated that the amount of kinetic energy that this would produce in the atmosphere would heat it up to a point that it would eliminate all life on the planet. Oops. Then in the aftermath of, biblical incineration, there would be great quakes across the earth and the tides would cease. Not that it would really matter because everyone would be dead. But then over the course of the next tens of thousands of years, the earth's axis would tilt until it went past 45 degrees and one hemisphere would just continuously face the sun while the other completely resided in darkness. Not that it really matters because all life is gone. But Alexander was not going to let these naysayers with their tales of complete incineration get in the way of his theorizing, because later he came up with his own creation myth, which gives us this gem.
I do not accept that.
Right.
I think that it was not a big bang, but it was a big suck.
I wish that I could explain this a little bit further, but it's a little nebulous.
I do not think that you will see the same Cleopatra lying on a sofa and letting an asp bite her breasts. I do not
on the
think
way
that.
back?
Yes,
No,
yes.
you don't think that'll
no.
happen? I don't either.
I think that the entire Alexander Abian situation is a great real-life example of what's referred to as a genius ditz. Some people can be incredibly intelligent in one area, but that also doesn't mean that they can't be complete morons in others. A great example of which would be Steve Jobs, who, gave himself cancer because he believed that if he just ate fruit, he wouldn't have to bathe. By all accounts, Alexander was a fantastic mathematician who did great work in that field. However, once he worked himself into this mental corner with blowing up the moon, solving all of the world's problems, he couldn't work himself back out. And I think that this is something that we are all susceptible to in various ways if we are not aware that, we have human limitations. I also want to make it incredibly clear. I genuinely do believe that Alexander Abian thought that blowing up the moon would genuinely solve all of the world's problems. In the contemporary interviews, a lot of his friends and reporters were kind of questioning if this was some kind of academic joke or if it was some kind of 15 minutes of fame play. But if it was a joke, he kept it going for his entire life, because after he died, they interviewed his son and he was like, yeah, he really kind of hated that moon. Alexander Abian died in 1999, leaving behind a great respected body of mathematics research and a few unhinged interviews about blowing up certain lunar bodies in our solar system. And as far as he considered his own legacy, Abian said, those critics who dismiss Abian's ideas are very close to those who dismiss Galileo. And I think it says it all that Abian was a man who referred to himself in third person when discussing his ideas. But for those of you who want to figure out more about the real Galileo, particularly his middle finger, watch this video.